Hello, welcome back. So it's funny how in my last video I was thanking my viewers for getting the previous video, like the just out of curiosity video, up to 17-18 views, and then when there was that video, like the last video, heresy hunting, like I went to go try to send it to my mom, and it had been up for 9 hours, and it was at 29 views. Now it's at 54 views, so that I am very grateful, but like, what does that mean for the heresy hunting series? Because I wasn't planning on doing the next heresy hunting video until like January, but now I'm thinking, do I gotta do one sooner so all of y'all who watched, I can hold your attention? Well, we'll see. Or hopefully you guys can come to like regular bookish content as well. So, yeah. So as you can see from the title, this video is about books I want to reread. These are the ones that I'm gonna try to get, because like, so if you, my last recent reads was a recent reads of rereads, and thought it was fun to do that. So I wanted to do more of those next year. But of course, I've got to pick out the books to read. And as you can see, we got quite a bit of a stack of books that I want to reread. And of course, this isn't including the books that I don't currently have physical copies of. So yeah. So yeah, we're gonna talk about today, kind of what to expect from future recent reads of rereads. So let's get into it. So the first book I want to reread is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. Of course, I want to reread this one since it was my favorite book from last year. So yeah, originally I had more to say because I had put together these notes when I was still in my I need to be drawn into really like it phase. So that came into account, but obviously that's not that relevant anymore. But this is still a pretty good book. So yeah, hopefully I'll like it just as much whenever I reread it. So next up for a book I want to reread is the Christy Miller Collection Volume 3. I talked about this in my disappointments and unexpected standouts. This is my favorite collection of the Christy Miller series so far. So obviously I'd want to reread this. And of course the main thing I liked about this book was Katie's character. But since this is part of a series, and this is as far as I've gotten in this series, so I'm thinking I probably need to finish the series before I reread this, and that's gonna be, it's more of a, because there's one more collection, but then there's also a few spin-off series that I want to read. So it might be a while till I reread this one, but hopefully it'll be good. I hope to complete my weird rereading of this series by rereading You Can't Sit With Us by Nancy Rue. This is the second book in the Mean Girl makeover trilogy. So I guess like I've reread this series in a weird way as an adult. Like in 2023 I reread the third book because I remembered that one was my favorite. And then last year I reread the first book. So now I gotta read the second book, although I'll probably just reread the third book again as well. So so yeah, there's, and rereading series and reading a series in weird order. I mean, I read this in the normal order when I first read this series, but I didn't always read series in weird order. There was this one series that I partially read in middle school called The Confessions of April Grace, and I read the third book, Chocolate Covered Baloney, first, and then I read the second book, And then I never even read the first book. So, although to be fair, I think when I picked up the third book in the series, I don't think I knew it was the third book in a series. So I'm thinking that might be another thing to kind of as side note of like what I want to reread. Because I'm thinking I should, now as an adult, I should read the first book for the first time and then just reread the second and third book. So again, this book again, I wasn't that concerned about being drawn in, and I probably won't be this time, but I remember through at least one part of the story I was pretty drawn in. Like I remember one time when I was reading this book for the first time, I would usually read before bed, so I was reading it, and then I just like kept reading and I was so invested in the story that I forgot that I had a life. Yeah. And also, I believe with this book, this might have been one of the first time I looked at Goodreads reviews of a book. Because I remember looking at reviews for the book. I mean, I'm not sure if it was Goodreads, but it was some kind of book reviewing platform. And I remember reading some reviews, and I think it was before I read the book, because I remember reading some reviews of people saying they were frustrated with Ginger, the main character, and I didn't and I don't think I'd read it yet because I was like, oh, I wonder. But then I remember there's this one view from this poor guy who read this book not knowing it was the second book in a series, and he was like, well, I would have enjoyed it more, but I didn't realize it was the second book in the series. I was like, oh. So yeah, that's a lot for this book. So yeah. I guess speaking of series, the next books that I want to reread is a trilogy, and that is the Status Updates trilogy by Laura L. Smith. So, the main reason why I want to reread the series is just so I can actually talk about these books. So I first read this series in 2024, but it was before I started my channel, and I planned in that year to make a video about these series, but because I was so slow in getting videos out, I just never got around to doing that. So I'm thinking if I want to talk about these books again, I might as well just reread the whole series. So yeah, we got this series. So I remember the first book I rated 3.5 stars, and I think that was because the way I put it at the time is that the first half of this book was more of like a 3-star read, and the second half was more of like a 4-star read. So we'll see if that's the same this time around. And then I remember I gave the other 2 books in the series 3 stars each. So, and if you want to know my thoughts about these books from the first time around, you can check out my Goodreads reviews. Although, there you won't find a review or even a rating for the second book, because and I did write a review from it, and I did put it on Goodreads, but then for some reason Goodreads it wouldn't post it. I think it had something to do with me having marked this book as currently reading, because I hadn't really done that before, and then when I do that and I want to post a review, suddenly there's a problem, which is why I avoid using the currently reading tab on Goodreads. So yeah, this will be good. And actually, fun fact, Laura L. Smith is probably one of the few authors where I have read all their fiction books. So yeah. So the next book I want to reread is one of my favorite books of all time, that being Wonder by R.J. Palacio. I love this book. Like I first read it, I think I might have been in grade 5 when I first read it, and I remember when I was like in middle school and stuff, there were so many nights I spent just up late just rereading parts of this book. That's how good this book is. Although the thing is, I haven't reread this book in years. So I'm a little worried. Well, here's what I'm worried about. I'm sure I'll still like this book, but I'm worried I'll give it anything less than 5 stars. Which I know that's a bit of an unrealistic expectation to have, seeing as how I've never given a book 5 stars. But yeah. But I guess I gotta put that aside and maybe just accept that this book will be a 4.5, but it'll still be really good, hopefully. But we shall see. So there have been a few thrillers that I've read where the thought has come into my mind, oh, I want to reread this knowing the twist. But it wasn't until reading Only If You're Lucky that I actually seriously considered doing that. So, and yeah, and I'm not even sure if it was necessarily the twist itself that made me want to do it. I think it was more so that I was just so certain the twists were gonna be what they obviously seemed to be, and then it turned out not to be that, so I kind of want to reread it to kind of look for clues that point to what the twist actually was. But I am a little hesitant. Well, I'm hesitant to reread this because, and this didn't bother me while the first time I read it, but this would bother me more if I read it this time, is that um there is swearing in this book, like F-bombs and I think a few other words. So yeah, so I'm not sure, and I can't remember how frequent it is, but I don't know. I'm just not sure. So yeah, I guess we'll see if I do end up rereading this one. So let's move on into the books I want to reread that I don't currently have physical copies of. So the first two we're gonna kind of talk about together because they kind of related. Some favorites from the books I've had to read for school. Those books are The Giver by Lois Lowry and The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. So The Book Thief I already talked about a little bit in my high school required reading tag, because this is my favorite book that I read during high school. And then The Giver was one of the ones I really liked from, I guess, the first, the um from like the first part, like kindergarten to grade 8, those books. Yeah, and I want to, let's see if they still hold up, if they're good as I remember them, because I remember The Giver. um it had me suddenly, it gave me an interest in like all things dystopian, but no other dystopian book that I read topped The Giver. So I guess we'll see that. And yeah, I don't know. And then another series that I want to reread is the Life at Kingston High trilogy by Melody Carlson. This was, of the series of Melody Carlson's that I read in high school, this series was probably my favorite, but I want to see it, by rereading it, I want to see, was it really the best series of Melody Carlson, or did I just like it that much because it was the first series of hers that I read? Like, I want to see what's up with that. So, yeah, and um, I remember why I actually read this series is because I wanted to read the third book, but then I realized it was the third book in the series. Um, and I was like, oh, I guess I gotta read the first 2 books. But actually, the third book ended up being my least favorite, and the first 2 books I liked more. I'm not sure which one of those 2 was my favorite, but yeah. The last book I want to reread, and this I think would be a good one to do for heresy hunting, although I'm not sure when the episode for this one's going to be because I don't know how and when I'm going to get a hold of this book. But that book is And the Bride Wore White by Dannah Gresh. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce her name. So yeah, this was a sexual purity book I read in high school. Uh, and I remember I didn't really like it that much, but I remember like because at the time when I was like reading these books in high school, I remember I wasn't really giving like star ratings. I had in the document just these like one sentence reviews, and my one sentence review for this book is simply sometimes I was mad. So I didn't like this book, but now I want to see uh, was I justified in not liking this book, or was I just, because I remember in trying to get a hold of this book, I looked up this book and I found a review, I'm not sure on what site. This person thought this book was sexist. And I remember thinking, I was like, okay, well, I didn't like this book either, but I don't know about that. So, yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to read this book the second time around. And so, because I'm hesitant about rereading some of these books, I might have to find other books to reread to include in my recent reads of rereads. So, there's some you might not seen those, but so anyways, that is it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it, and goodbye.